Good evening, my YouTube family. Thanks for spending a few moments and joining me for another story tonight about one of my amazing trips to Thailand. 7 trips there overall, and they each had something interesting developed from the trip, and I'll tell you about that this evening. So I arrive in Bangkok, and the next day I usually go to visit my Christian church, and I did. And that next night, I wanted to fly out of Bangkok to an island called Koh Samui. It's where they had filmed the James Bond movie, and the movie was The Man with the Golden Gun. Had to go see it because if you look at the movie trailers on Man with the Golden Gun, go to the search bar on YouTube, pull up Man with the Golden Gun, and pull up movie trailer, and you'll see why I wanted to go see it. Beautiful island. And you want to visit a place like this because it's just stunning how beautiful the island is and the different things you'll see. Now in Thailand, you have 2 bodies of water. You have the Gulf of Thailand and you have the Bay of Thailand. So Koh Samui was this island that was located right on the borders of the Gulf of Thailand. That's where I was. I found this resort. It was called Cocoa Palms. They had lots of palm trees, lots of coconut trees. So they named it Cocoa Palms. And for a mere $55 a night, you get a bungalow right near the ocean. You're a couple hundred feet from the pool, and you get a whole meal included. But that particular first night, I had several people tell me, "Sir, while you're here at the hotel and in this resort, they have the restaurant right over there, which is near the beach, and that's included with your room. But tonight's a really special night." It was mid-April, and this was the year 2017. It was actually the 19th day of April. April 19, 2017. I'll never forget it. And why do I remember that date? Because April 15, here in the US, you're going to file your taxes and get them filed by April 15. Tax deadline date. Well, in Thailand, if you're there mid-April, give or take 15, 16, 17, around mid-month, they celebrate a festival. They call it their water festival. It's called Songkran. The word song, Songkran. So you're there during Songkran, and what does that mean? They're so grateful for water and the joy that water brings to them in this beautiful country that they celebrate water by having people come out, and if you're coming out of your hotel, no matter what you're wearing, you're going to get drenched with squirt guns and water pistols and water balloons. They just celebrate the whole week with water. Sort of like the 4th of July here in the US, but there they celebrate water, and whatever you're wearing is going to get soaked. So here I was on the island of Koh Samui, and here I am at this resort, Cocoa Palms. And that particular night, although I had a free meal at the hotel, someone told me, "Sir, you got to go the other side of this island, and you got to go to the Fisherman's Wharf." It was a little community on the island where they had wonderful arts and craft shops, wonderful food kiosks, and amazing food made right before your eyes on hot flames. No matter what you're eating, you're going to be happy with it. And that's what I found. Some things I wouldn't eat because they weren't for me, but I mean, any kind of seafood, they cook it there. I don't eat certain kinds of seafood, but what I do eat was always wonderful and sort of unforgettable. So that particular night, I'm leaving the hotel and I was trying to get a ride over to this other side of the island to a place called Fisherman's Wharf. But there were no cabs, they were busy, but the front desk at the hotel said, "We can get you the hotel shuttle, the airport shuttle, because tonight there's no airliners coming in to stay. They're all checked in already for the evening. And here it is 6 o'clock at night, and the last flight we picked up an hour ago." So that's gonna go over to the Fisherman's Wharf. And you hop on there, they'll be here in 10 minutes, and they'll be about an hour and 20 minutes at the Fisherman's Wharf. So I took the airport shuttle over there and spent an hour and a half. I remember I got there, pretty sure I had a pina colada that night, and I got some amazing food at one of the food kiosks, all made right in front of your eyes, right before open flames, no matter what they were cooking, whether it was fresh fish, corn on the cob. I remember I have pictures of that, eating corn on the cob, that it looked like it just came off the farm field, and here I was eating corn on the cob. Amazing. So that particular night, I go to some of the kiosks where they had handcrafted goods, little Volkswagen camper buses and a couple other things, but I wanted to buy 4 of the VW camper buses. They only had 2. So I paid for all 4, and I asked the guy who crafted them. He said, I'll be back here tomorrow night. I don't live on the island, I live across the body of water, but I will be back tomorrow night. We're here 2 days a week, and I'll bring 2 more of those VW camper buses. And he said, don't miss me, I'll be here from 6 to 8. That's what I did. Next night, I go to the hotel desk and I say, can I get the airport shuttle? He said, well, sir, because it's mid-month of April and we celebrate Songkran, the airport shuttle is too busy, but you could. I said, what about a cab? They said, they're awful busy. You see those people there at the corner of the front desk of the hotel? Yeah, they've been waiting over an hour. I said, well, how else can I get across to the other side of Fisherman's Wharf? And they said, we can rent you a moped. So that night, they rented me a moped. They said, are you sure you can drive? I said, well, I used to race motocross, so I'm pretty good. And that's exactly what I did. I rented a moped that night, and I was able to get my little wheels to get me over to the other side of the island so I could go have some more good food, and so I could go pick up the total of these 4 VW handmade camper buses. And I'll never forget getting on the bike. The helmet was really tight, but I was not going to drive without the helmet, although in Thailand, they tell you you don't have to wear a helmet. But I did. When you race motorbikes, you realize someone else can goof up, but that happens more often than not. It's the other driver or rider that goofs up, and you're the one that gets hurt. So I put the helmet on. It was tight, but I got it on snug. I remember leaving the campus of the resort I was at, Cocoa Palms, and I pull over, tighten the strap on my helmet, and I get out on the main road for this little town. And I'm heading over to Fisherman's Wharf. And then my lights went out. A drunk driver came, hit me very hard, and I wind up getting transported by ambulance to the local hospital. The guy that hit me was very drunk, and he got transported to the local jail. But I was unconscious. My head was cracked open. You could see a little bit of dent in the skull, and I think they call that TBI, traumatic brain injury. Used to look worse than what it does, but whatever I've got there, it's like a little runway, and it's going to be dented for as long as I have life in this world. So I wind up in the hospital. I spent 9 nights in the hospital, and for 6 nights I was unconscious. And I'll tell you how the miracle began to unfold and why it was a miracle story. After about 2 years ago, my brother-in-law, Bob, who had flown over to Thailand from the US, and he came, he heard I was very injured. I may or may not make it, but he came with 2 of my nephews, and on day number 6, I regained my consciousness, and my nephew said, Uncle Mark, do you know where you are? I said, well, guys, I'm in a hospital. That much I do know, and I have been a hospital chaplain, so I had familiarity with the hospital and a clinical environment, and that's where I was. And I said, did I have an accident last night? They said, no, Uncle Mark, you had an accident a week ago, but your lights just came back on tonight. So there I was, waking up from an injury, and didn't really have much to remember about it. to this day, I don't really remember much about the evening. But here's what I do know. It was about 2 years ago, because the accident happened April 19, 2017, so 9 years ago. And my brother-in-law said to me, "Mark, did I ever tell you what happened that night? You were in the ER about an hour." And the doctor called over the head nurse and said, "Nurse, you need to leave the ER and you need to go back to your office." She said, "What am I going to do in my office? The man is here. We're taking care of him as best we can." Pulls out my wallet and pulls out my license and hands it to the nurse and says, "You need to scan the man's license and you need to get a scanned copy over to the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok. And you need to tell the embassy that we have him with us in our ER, that his fuse is short, and that his family needs to know his condition." So that's what she did. She leaves the ER, goes to her office, spends 30 minutes, came back to the ER, tells the doctor, "Okay, I contacted the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok. They connected me also with the U.S. Embassy in Washington, D.C. You're flying out of the country with your passport, you're going to always have a contact person on your passport linkage." And I believe mine was my sister Maureen, and she's an RN, so I always felt comfortable having Maureen on my list. So they knew that they had to reach out as best they could to her, and she came back in the ER and said to the doctor that she had made the phone call, she sent the scanned copy of my license, and they would call the hospital as soon as they were able to contact my family. And then the nurse said to the doctor, "Doctor, how's he doing?" He said, "He's not doing any better than he was 30 minutes ago when you left." She said, "What else can we do to help the man?" He said, "It would take a miracle." She said, "What would the miracle look like?" He said, "Nurse, if they come through the ER door with a broken arm, leg, wrist, ankle, I can take care of just about every one of them. But do you see this man? Yeah, he's bleeding out of his skull. His skull is cracked open, and he's not doing very good." He said, "What would the miracle be? You would have to find the #1 neurosurgeon in Thailand to somehow be on this island tonight and help us with this man. That's what is going to be the miracle." She leaves the ER, goes to her office, spends about 30 minutes, came back to the emergency room, tells the doctor, "Here's the name of a doctor, here's who I found." He said, "Well, nurse, thank you. We all know that doctor's name. But he doesn't live on this island. He lives in Bangkok, and he works at the biggest hospital in Bangkok. And we all know him. So thank you for reaching out." But she said, no, let me tell you what happened." She called the doctor's office, and they said, "Well, he's not here, but we're going to transfer you to his cell phone." And they transferred the nurse where I am to the doctor's cell phone. And he understood very quickly why he was talking to the nurse on this island hospital. And he said, "Nurse, I do live and work in Bangkok. I am a neurosurgeon, very busy one. And I'm not in Bangkok because I'm actually with my wife and children at our vacation home on the island of Koh Samui." He was on the same island I was on. He drove over, he was there in about 15, 20 minutes. And he spent the next 12 hours. And he did a procedure on my skull called a subdural craniotomy, where he had to kind of go in and dig below the skull bone and correct as best he could the damage to my skull. And that's all I can tell you that he did, but the way it unfolded was miraculous. He happens to not be home, but he's where I am, on the same island, came to the hospital, spends 12 hours, and does a procedure that actually saves my life. I've had a lot of people ask me, what else do you remember about the evening? I said, I don't remember much. I do know that it took about 3 or 4 weeks before the doctors in Thailand would give me an authorization, basically an airworthy certificate. Once you have a traumatic brain injury, they don't let you get back in an airplane, particularly one that's going to be 2 flights, total of about 24 hours in the plane, and you're up at 46,000 feet trying to get back home. But after 3 weeks, they began to run my blood chemistries, my oxygen profiles, and after 3.5 weeks, they determined now I was healthy enough to get on a plane, come back to my hometown, which is what I did. So when I got back to my hometown in Northern Virginia, I went to see a concussion team, and it was kind of amazing what happened in that visit. That would be another story, and I wouldn't have time to tell all of that, but here's what I can tell you. They sort of run you through an evaluation to see how healthy your gears are turning. Are all the gears turning well? And mine were doing pretty good, but they weren't all there yet. So before I left the examination room, they said, Mark, we're going to go ahead and put you in front of this computer, and here's a questionnaire like a little exam, and we want to evaluate how sharp everything is working. So there's going to be a series of questions. There's going to be little images like of square boxes, match it up to square boxes. There's going to be triangles, you need to match those up with triangles, and so forth and so on. And that's what I did. And when we got done, the doctor said, okay, Mark, thank you. So you're going to come back here in about 5 weeks and we're going to do it again. I said, well, how did I do? They said, well, you're about 90% normal, but you're going to have to do some work. And a lot of people with the level of accident injury you had, they're not going to get back everything that they lost. So that discouraged me. I said, well, I'm going to try to work very hard and make a difference. And so I left the doctor's office that night and got back home. And sure enough, 5 or 6 weeks later, I go back and get re-examined. They checked the actual site of my skull. Things were healing up well. Stitches were out. And they said, same thing, Mark, sit down in front of this computer. We're going to give you the same 30 minutes, and we want to see how you're doing. So after about 20 minutes, I completed this evaluation, and 2 doctors came in the room. I said, why are there 2 of you guys? You want to give me 2 bills or just kind of being funny? They said, no, Mr. Sweeney, we normally don't see the kind of result we're seeing. I said, is that good or bad? They said, well, when you finished about 10 minutes before most people finish that evaluation. And that tells us that things are working very well. I said, what else? They said, well, what else is that finishing early is one thing, but you basically got 100% of the correct response to each question that this test or evaluation was asking of you. And they said, we don't see that very often. You're actually testing 105% of normal. After an injury like that, we both wanted to see it. That's why there's 2 of us here in this team of convulsion doctors. That day they gave me a shirt, which I still have, and it basically pointed out that I could wear a shirt that basically mission complete. And I felt so joyful that my mission was complete and that I had restored and recovered everything that this brain injury had caused. So it's an amazing story to be able to tell. 3 years ago, I went back to Thailand. I wanted to meet the doctor who had done the surgery. And I was able to get him on the phone. A friend of mine was translating for me. He spoke English and Thai. And I said, Doc, I've never met you, but I wanted to come and take you to dinner or just give you a handshake. He said, well, Mark, I'm so glad you called. He said, I remember meeting you, but we've never talked because you were not conscious at all. And today to be able to talk to you is really quite amazing for me. So I'm so grateful you called, but I'm unavailable to meet you because I'm very busy. He said, I am now the medical director for Chevron Oil Corporation, and I oversee 4,800 people in all of Southeast Asia. He said, my schedule would not allow me to meet with you, but he said, I'll never forget you. So you go through your life and you hit these speed bumps in your life where things happen that are very unexpected and not at all desirable. But to be able to look back at that and realize I'm still living and breathing because it was a miracle. And the miracle was given to me by the hands of God. And God used the hands of this surgeon to create and provide me really a miracle procedure that saved my life. So I'm grateful that we have a God in this world that created us. We are made in His image, and that He does miracles in our lives that bring us to the points of where we are. I'll tell more of the story on another moment, but tonight I just wanted to share that much of this miracle story or miracle moment of my life. And it's one more reason why I can thank God for having a God that loves us, guides us, and restores us. Have a great evening, folks. Thanks for listening, and I'll tell you more stories next time we come back to the Rolling Chaplain channel. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.